Before I left the occult, there was one moment that changed everything for me. It wasn't during a ritual. It wasn't during a confrontation. It was during a night of silence, the kind we relied on to work unnoticed. We always believed nighttime belonged to us. Sleep lowered defenses. Fatigue softened resistance. Dreams blurred discernment. And most people, even believers, went to bed carrying fear, stress, unresolved anger, or exhaustion straight into their sleep. That was the opening. But every so often, something disrupted that access. And when it did, it unsettled us. There were individuals we could not stay around, not because they shouted, not because they were dramatic, but because right before sleep, they spoke a few calm, deliberate words, without fear, without ritual, without emotion, and the atmosphere shifted. I didn't understand it at first. I was trained to believe power came from complexity, symbols, timing, formulas. But these people weren't performing anything. They were aligning. I remember the first time it happened clearly. We had been monitoring someone for weeks. Patterns were predictable. Anxiety at night, restless sleep, mental fatigue. Then suddenly, everything changed. The pressure stopped. The access closed. The noise went quiet. We later learned what had changed. They stopped going to sleep carrying fear. They stopped rehearsing stress. They stopped ending their day in vulnerability. Instead, they ended their night with authority. Let me be very clear before we go any further. This is not about superstition. It's not about magic words. And it's not about guaranteed outcomes spoken like a formula. It's about agreement. Darkness does not stay where agreement has been withdrawn, not because of volume, not because of drama, but because alignment removes permission. Most believers underestimate the power of how they end their day. They pray in the morning, they fight during the day, but they fall asleep unguarded at night. And that's where this message begins. Because there are four simple words rooted in truth, spoken with calm authority, that consistently shut down access when repeated with understanding, not as a ritual, as a posture. In the next chapter, I'm going to explain why sleep is the most contested moment spiritually and why what you say in the final seconds before rest matters more than most people realize. Stay with me. This is where clarity begins. If you really want to understand why those final words before sleep matter, you have to understand what happens spiritually when the body shuts down. During the day, your will is active, your mind is alert, your filters are strong, you evaluate thoughts, you question emotions, you resist impulses. But when you fall asleep, those defenses lower. Your conscious guard steps back, and your subconscious becomes more impressionable. Inside the occult, this was not mysterious, it was strategic. Nighttime was considered the easiest window for influence, not because of some dramatic supernatural spectacle, but because exhaustion weakens discernment. A tired mind does not fight as clearly. A stressed heart does not filter as carefully. An unresolved emotion carried into sleep becomes the atmosphere of the night. We didn't need dramatic manifestations. We needed vulnerability. If someone went to bed anxious, the anxiety often amplified in dreams. If they went to bed angry, conflict replayed internally. If they fell asleep feeling condemned or afraid, those emotions deepened overnight. The goal was simple: reinforce whatever emotional state was already present. That's why what happens in the final 5 minutes before sleep is critical. Most people scroll, they replay conversations, they worry about tomorrow, they rehearse arguments in their head, and then they close their eyes in that state. You cannot expect peaceful rest if you enter sleep carrying chaos. There were individuals, however, who disrupted this pattern completely, and it confused us at first. They were not dramatic. They did not perform rituals. They did not chant. They simply refused to end their day in emotional agreement with fear. Right before sleeping, they would intentionally shift the atmosphere of their own mind. They would slow down, breathe, speak truth calmly, release the day, surrender stress, and affirm their identity and protection in God. And something changed. The emotional charge we relied on was no longer there. The anxiety wasn't being rehearsed. The anger wasn't being replayed. The fear wasn't being reinforced. Without emotional agreement, influence had nothing to amplify. This is the key most believers miss. Darkness feeds on unprocessed emotion and unchallenged thought. When you fall asleep in agreement with fear, fear grows. When you fall asleep in agreement with peace, peace stabilizes. It is not the night itself that is powerful. It is the alignment you carry into it. Sleep is not just physical rest. It is surrender. And whatever you surrender your mind to in those final moments often shapes the tone of your dreams and your waking state. That's why those 4 words matter, not as magic, not as a formula, but as a deliberate withdrawal of agreement from fear. In the next chapter, I'm going to reveal what those words represent and why simplicity is more powerful than complexity when it comes to spiritual authority. Because the enemy thrives in confusion, but authority thrives in clarity. This is where many people expect something complex, a long phrase, a special name, a ritualistic sequence. That expectation alone reveals how deeply we were trained to believe power must be complicated. Inside the occult, complexity was our cover. The more complicated something sounded, the more people assumed it carried authority. But when I stepped away from that world and began to understand truth, I realized something unsettling. Real authority is simple, clear, and calm. The 4 words I'm talking about are not a spell, they are not a chant, they are a declaration of alignment, and they work because they remove the one thing darkness requires to stay: agreement. Those 4 words are: Jesus, I trust you. Let that settle for a moment. When spoken slowly, intentionally, and without fear right before sleep, those words do something specific. They settle the mind. They quiet internal striving. They withdraw agreement from anxiety, control, and self-reliance. In the occult, we understood that fear and control always worked together. If someone felt responsible for holding everything together, they were exhausted. If they were exhausted, they were easier to influence. But trust disrupts that entire cycle. When a person says, Jesus, I trust you, they are doing several things at once, even if they don't realize it. They are surrendering control. They are rejecting fear-based vigilance. They are reaffirming identity and authority. They are placing responsibility back where it belongs. And that shift is powerful. I watched this happen more times than I can count. People who stopped fighting mentally at night. People who stopped bracing themselves for attack. People who stopped rehearsing tomorrow's problems before sleep. Nothing dramatic happened. And that's the point. The atmosphere simply changed. The noise quieted. The rest deepened. And without fear being fed, influence had nothing to attach to. Darkness does not need to be chased away loudly. It leaves when permission is removed. These words are effective because they are relational, not ritualistic. They acknowledge authority without trying to manufacture it. They place the heart in a posture of rest instead of resistance. And rest is dangerous to anything that relies on fear. Now, I need to say this clearly. Saying these words once will not magically fix everything. This is not about instant results. It is about consistency. Alignment compounds, peace builds, authority stabilizes. When those four words become the final agreement of your day, something changes over time. Your sleep becomes restorative instead of restless. Your dreams become quieter. Your mornings feel clearer. And fear slowly loses its grip. In the next chapter, I'm going to explain why some people experience brief resistance when they start doing this, and why that resistance is not a sign of failure, but confirmation that alignment is shifting. Don't stop at the first quiet night. Consistency is where the real change happens. This is the part that surprises people. They start ending their night differently. They slow down. They stop scrolling. They say those four words calmly before sleep. And for a night or two, everything feels peaceful. Then suddenly, resistance, restlessness, strange dreams, a spike of anxiety right as they're drifting off, a thought that says, "This isn't working." Inside the occult, we expected this, because whenever agreement begins to shift, whatever benefited from the old pattern checks to see if the change is permanent. Not aggressively, subtly. Resistance does not mean something is stronger. It means something is being challenged. Think of it like this. If a room has been noisy for years and you suddenly turn off the sound, the silence feels loud at first. Your system notices the change. That doesn't mean the noise is winning. It means your environment is recalibrating. Many people quit right here. They assume the discomfort means danger. But in reality, it often means detox. You are breaking a habit of fear, not fighting an enemy. For years, your nervous system may have gone to sleep braced for impact, anticipating problems, replaying conversations, rehearsing tomorrow's stress. When you suddenly stop feeding that cycle, your mind doesn't know what to do with the quiet at first, so it protests. That protest is not spiritual failure, it's adjustment. This is why calm matters so much. If resistance shows up, don't escalate emotionally, don't analyze it, don't dramatize it. Simply return to the posture. Jesus, I trust you. Not louder, not faster, just steadier. When people panicked at resistance, we knew access would reopen. Fear always reactivates agreement. But when someone stayed calm, when they refused to interpret discomfort as danger, the pattern collapsed quickly. This is where many believers accidentally give ground back. They overreact. They go searching for explanations. They assume something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. You are learning how to rest without fear. And that takes practice. Let me say something important here. You are not trying to force peace. You are allowing it. Peace cannot be manufactured through effort. It emerges when control is released. So if resistance shows up, Do not change the words. Do not search for new techniques. Do not add complexity. Stay simple. Stay consistent. Because simplicity starves fear, and fear is the only thing that keeps the cycle alive. In the final chapter, I'm going to show you what happens when those 4 words become a habit. Not just how your sleep changes, but how your thinking, emotions, and daily life begin to stabilize over time. This isn't about one night. It's about who you become when trust replaces vigilance. This is where everything comes together. Because the goal was never just a peaceful night. The goal was a transformed posture. When those 4 words become the final agreement of your day, Jesus, I trust you, something deeper than sleep begins to change. Trust stops being a momentary decision and becomes a default position. And when trust becomes your default, vigilance loses its job. Inside the occult, we understood something that still shocks people when they hear it. Fear is exhausting, but vigilance is empowering to the wrong side. Vigilance keeps people alert, tense, self-protective, and constantly scanning for danger. And a vigilant mind never truly rests. It stays open, it stays reactive, but trust closes what vigilance keeps open. I watched people change slowly, but unmistakably, when they stopped ending their nights in self-protection and started ending them in surrender. Their dreams became quieter, not perfect, but quieter. Their mornings became clearer. They stopped waking up already tired. They stopped carrying yesterday's anxiety into today's decisions. And here's what mattered most: their reactions changed. When pressure came during the day, they didn't spiral as quickly. When conflict appeared, they didn't brace for disaster. When uncertainty showed up, they didn't immediately assume threat, because the night had already trained their nervous system to release control. That training compounds. Over time, trust reshapes thought patterns. Thought patterns reshape emotional responses. Emotional responses reshape behavior, and behavior reshapes outcomes. This is why simplicity works. Not because it's shallow, but because it's sustainable. Anyone can shout in crisis. Very few people can rest consistently. But rest is where alignment deepens. Let me say this clearly before we close. Those 4 words are not a weapon you swing. They are a posture you adopt. You are not confronting darkness directly. You are withdrawing the environment it needs to remain. Darkness does not stay where fear is no longer rehearsed. Oppression does not thrive where control is released. Confusion does not linger where trust is consistent. When you say, Jesus, I trust you night after night, you are not asking him to protect you. You are acknowledging that he already is. That acknowledgement changes everything. So tonight, don't rush. Don't scroll. Don't carry the weight of the day into your bed. Sit in the quiet for a moment. Breathe. And let those 4 words be the final agreement of your day. Not as a ritual, not as a superstition, but as alignment. And then sleep, not braced, not guarded, not anxious, but covered. Because when trust replaces fear, access fades. And when access fades, peace remains.